Welcome everybody back to another edition of Truth Seekers, along with Coach Nick and myself, Coach Josh. We have Alex joining us today. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you and I have been connecting for the last couple of weeks on some pretty interesting topics, and you have an interesting story, which kind of relates to the last recording that Coach and I just did about some sports. And I know you have some background in sports, so maybe if you wouldn't mind starting there with your relationship with sports, how you grew up with it, and your relationship with it now.
Of course. So since I could walk, I played soccer, and I always thought that that's what I would do long term, professional soccer, make a ton of money, have fun, enjoy life. But then I had not a sprain, I cracked my patella, which is just your kneecap. And when that happened, I had to take time off, let it heal. But when it healed, there was a calcium escape. So about a bone this big was in my knee, like on the front of my knee, rubbing against my ligaments and my bone. So I had to get surgery for that. Painful, also took me out of time, starting to get a little less confident about this route. And then I ended up getting 4 concussions. So at that point, the doctors said, you're not allowed to play contact sports. You gotta stop playing. Like you're not supposed to be playing. So I was super confused for a while. I had no clue what I wanted to do because that was the meaning in my life. That was the purpose for me. That's something I'd always pursued. Every day after school, I was playing soccer with friends. When I was home, I was doing something at home. That was my life. So when that kind of came to an end, I was super confused, and there was a period of time where I didn't have, a purpose or meaning or anything, and I wasn't that happy. And then eventually, I came to a point where I decided to start focusing on, okay, what am I going to do? Life's happening. I got to figure something out one way or the other. And I started actively pursuing. And at that point, life started handing me stuff. Once I actively started pursuing, I wanted to travel the world. That's one of the many things that I like to do is travel. I've always done it. I'm half Austrian, half Greek. So I visit my grandparents in Austria every summer since I was little. So travel is something that I've completely grown up with and always have wanted to do and will want to continue to do. So that was kind of my one certainty was I want to travel. How can I do this? Made a list, tried to figure out, okay, how can I do this? And then came across, you can do stocks. And I talked to someone who knew someone. I was lucky enough to be able to introduce myself to him. He actually did foreign exchange trading, and he taught me how to trade. Now I'm able to trade foreign exchange currencies, stocks, and cryptocurrency. And we've become very close friends. We're launching a business actually this May together, and we have other businesses lined up for the future as well. So that's kind of my story there.
That's crazy. Yeah, we were just talking last episode of, my story was baseball. I was a baseball player. I actually got cut from 2 different collegiate teams, and was such a gut punch to me because that's how I identified myself. I was a baseball player. That's what I was. That's what I did. That's who, how I identified myself. So there is that time period, right, Alex? I'm sure you can attest to this. It's like, it's the worst. It's almost like this area of depression with like, who am I? And it's like you almost don't even want to reflect on. You already know who you are, and you've been told that you can't be that person, and it's difficult to come to terms with that. But I like the term that you use. I think you said like the world gave me this, or I can't remember what you said, but
everything just started falling. Once I actively started looking and pursuing, everything started falling into my lap one after the other.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear Coach's thoughts on this too, because I think part of that process is you having to be open to that. So I'm sure there was something that's, triggered you separating yourself a little bit more from your old identity and being open to some of the newer stuff, like you mentioned, the travel. But then all of a sudden there's this whole other universe that, not defines you now, but you're more connected to, that it's part of your identity and who you are now, as opposed to, who knows where you could have been if you didn't get those injuries, didn't get those concussions.
Absolutely. So for me, the biggest thing is not even the knee injuries or any of that, the concussions, because it took me out of my habits, made me think completely differently. And for me, because at first it wasn't, oh, I'm done with soccer. Because, like when you probably know when you're playing sports, people are like, you're injured, sit out, whatever, and you're like, no, you're just like, I want to keep going. So I started doing a ton of research on psychology, neuroscience, like how can I regenerate my brain cells, neurogenesis, all sorts. And then I just went down a huge rabbit hole of psychology, how the body works with the brain, how your thoughts were like, it's a huge interconnected world of that stuff. And that kind of put me on the right path where everything started just clicking into place and I was kind of figuring everything out. So
because that moment, like once you started, that seemed like a very significant thing you said, because you said it twice now. Once I started actively pursuing, so what was the moment that after you went down that rabbit hole and found out some stuff, what is it that you found out which gave you the catalyst to make a change, or what was the threshold moment? Tell us more about that.
Of course. So I used to smoke a lot of weed in high school, and I would usually like sit in my bed, lay in my bed and watch some TV or something to like end off the day and whatnot, and then go to bed. And then one time I was just laying in my bed watching TV show. It's called Cheers. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It takes place in a bar the whole time. And at one point he says like, it's time to grow up. And then I felt like I got slapped in the face. So that was one thing. And my face was just vibrating and I was like, damn, I got to start figuring out what I'm going to do. So that was that first catalyst.
Wow.
And then with the concussions, starting for me, it was, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to choose to be happy and try to be just be a little bit better tomorrow than I was yesterday. So that's kind of how it started. And I was like, okay. And it was literally just education, started picking up books, being grateful, listening to podcasts, just actively seeking wisdom. And then, everything just started falling into my lap because I was actively putting myself in the right positions. Like I got very lucky with the ability to have a mentor, but I was the person that walked up and introduced myself and talked to him. I put myself in that space. So it's a little bit of a combination of you putting yourself out there, but then also, life bringing you certain things as well. You're attracting them to you.
Yeah, it's so interesting because once you understand that, you can see that the principles can apply to anyone and anything, whatever it is that you want. There needs to be that moment where you change from not being willing to see something to be willing to see something, and then your whole world opens up, as you say, and you start operating on a different frequency. And all those people that perhaps they're all along, suddenly you're like, oh, yeah, you be my mentor, like because you didn't see it before, because you weren't operating the same thing. So that's super cool, right? Because you can have the best thing to say in the world to someone, and whether that's like a product or service, and we'll think about it from a coaching point of view, all these principles are the same. It's just application of them. But if you're not willing to do the work, if you're not open, I would say like people that I want to work with are people that are open and they want to take on new perspectives and they want to do new things, basically coachable. And then number two, they're damn hungry to go and get something else. Those two things.
Gotta have desire.
Everything else you set after those two things, but you've got to have those two things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm curious, Alex, about your plunge into like trading foreign currencies and cryptocurrency. Like it's such a, it's becoming more popular, I guess, but it's such an unknown, right? Like how was there any fear, I guess, involved, or what was was there any hesitation to getting into that, or you just jump head in?
So for me, I'm leaving a lot of stuff out. I don't want to go like super, super deep. We're trying to just keep this informative and, share my story. But like I was not in my happiest place beforehand. So like, if, I'm sure with sports and you as well, Coach Nick, coming out of a place where it's like you're not having the greatest time, you don't really have fear. It's like how much lower, you can only go up. So there's no fear. You're just like, whatever needs to happen, whatever I need to do, whatever I can do, I'm gonna go do it. What else? Like what else is the problem? Right. So no, there was no fear. I had no clue what the foreign exchange trading, like I had no clue what any of that was. I walked up to my dear friend now and I was like, he was telling me about $1 trillion market. And I was just like, what? Like what? I only knew about the stock market, you know? And then he also told me a little bit about crypto. So like I didn't even know about crypto or the foreign exchange market until he told me about them. I just knew stocks, and I didn't know you could trade options or anything like that. I just looked at stocks as investing, not even like trading. So yeah, it just completely opened my eyes. But I was so curious, I had a desire to learn, because that's, as I was saying earlier, is my whole thing was I love seeking wisdom, like I just had a burning desire to learn whatever he had to teach. He knew what he was doing. He's been doing it for a while. Whatever he can give me, I'm going to listen. I'm going to give him my all, my 100%. I spent the whole summer on a demo account nonstop. And I flew to, I told you I travel. Like I flew to Greece that year. In the car, I was on my phone, with the foreign exchange. I was practicing on my demo account. In the airport, I was on my demo account. And I was in Greece and I had Wi-Fi. I was on my demo account. So, I just plunged into it, which is the best thing I could have done.
It's so cool. How many principles there, like in action? It's just it's wonderful to hear. I love what you said about like the leverage that you get, and my words here, but the pain of like being you don't see anything else. Like there's nothing else to risk. Because they're like it's all out there, right? It's like okay, whatever I'm doing, I'm moving forward. So there's no decision to make. I'm moving forward. I get it's great. I'm in a great place because what I can do is move forward. Exactly. How do you hold on to that principle? Well, how have you done that, Alex, as you've started to be more successful at what you are doing? What's the drive that you use now to keep you going forward?
So, you got to have purpose first and foremost. You got to have, I believe you need a good team, like a great team around you. Got to have a reason. You got to have a reason to do something. Otherwise, what's the point? People don't do stuff just because, you have reasons why you do things. For me, it started because, okay, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want to figure out what I'm trying to do, whatever. And, it kept getting molded into a lot more. But like I was saying, reading the books, like I did a complete, like my identity, I just did a complete evaluation. I searched up, Tony Robbins and all that kind of stuff. I listened to it, how to manage your state, all that stuff. So I literally just evaluated my values, principles, what to live by, how to control your emotions. And, as I was saying, I was also going into neuroscience and psychology. So how to like flip the switch when I need to, instead of just being at the expense of how I'm feeling. It's like, oh, I don't want to do this right now. It's okay, how can I make myself switch into that mode? So, and plus I have rich like routine, like I wake up every morning, I meditate, I write my goals down, I write what I'm grateful for, I do some affirmations, and I work out. And I take a cold shower, not all the time, but I try to take cold showers. So those like certain things, plus reading and talking to like-minded people who you're trying to go, down the same journey, down the same path, trying to achieve something together, definitely helps. Definitely is a huge part of it.
A lot of stories that you hear where people like have gone really cool success stories. And I know that you're just starting out, like you're not done here. Like you're just
it's a prequel.
Of a conversation, right? Yeah. So it's even now you can tell like, okay, where you were, what gave you the leverage to move and just do something, put it out there, because it's like there's no risk because there's nothing else left, and then to move into that place and then stay there by activating the principles of moving towards the pleasure, managing your state, understanding that your emotions there are to help you, taking cues from that, knowing that you're in control, flicking the switch, creating triggers, all that cool stuff. Why is it you think that people that often are in that process of success have that story to start off with, have that story of pain to start off?
Because if you don't actively seek to be uncomfortable, then you're just waiting for pain to make you change. It kind of goes into habit. When you're in a cycle of habits, you're not going to do anything different because your mind is asleep. Your prefrontal cortex is not active. But then once you get into a threshold of pain that you cannot deal with this anymore, your mind starts to finally wake up. Or, example, if you get a concussion, your brain is disrupted. Your thinking starts to change. You're not thinking in the same loop that you were thinking before. And when you have a thought and do something, every time you do something, it gets stronger. So it becomes more habitual. So this is why I like traveling. For a lot of people, that's how they find themselves, is because when they go travel, they're not asleep. Their prefrontal cortex is awake. They're actively, thinking and doing, and they can't be stuck in habits because it's a new experience. They're having all sorts of stimulus that they're not used to and haven't ingrained in themselves already on a constant basis. So it's that awakening. I think that's really what it is there has to be a level of pain for you to either awaken. There's a lot of different ways it happens. A lot of people have bucks, some people travel, some people, get injuries or something, whatever the case may be, but it's that initial awakening that spikes an interest. I believe for me, this is how it works, spikes an interest, and you start to try and learn more about this, and you start branching off into all sorts of other stuff.
We can underscore this point because it's so important, because I think people want to try and avoid those stories. Oh, glad I wasn't in that position. But in actual fact, the lesson is that that's really valuable, like, so, because we all run these patterns, we create these patterns for ourselves, and a lot of them are unconscious. And as you say, like, the more we do them, the deeper they get. It's like a record, play the same thing, play the same thing. You need to break the pattern first in order to create the new one, right? And so taking yourself out of one environment, put yourself in a new environment, you hit the reset button. And I've traveled, lived all over the place, so I understand how that feels. Like, you hit the reset button. So I think that the pain that you want is you want it to be more acute than you want it to be chronic. You want a broken arm. So you're like, don't do that thing again that gave you the broken arm. Because now for 6 weeks or whatever it is, you've got to wear like that cast is going to drive you crazy, rather than having just like a slightly sore back. A slightly sore back's like, I don't really notice it. And like, oh, that's a bit sore today, but like, didn't really do anything. And then you have a slightly sore back for 20 years. One day, like, I can't even get out of bed anymore. The quality of my life has been suffering for 20 years, and I haven't done anything about it. I'd rather have a broken arm, please. So like, that's such a gift that you had in that place that you were at, thinking that purpose and passion you had was it for you. To have that ripped out, that pain you experienced is exactly why you are where you are now, and no doubt going to exponentially grow into further parts of your life. So it's just, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's don't regret anything. I'm very happy everything happened the way it happened, as it needed to, for sure.
Isn't that funny? You never would have pictured yourself saying that a couple of years ago. And this is the biggest lesson for myself, probably the listeners, the viewers, is when you're in those situations where it's just absolutely terrible, right? It feels like the worst moment of your life. If you can find some place or some way to give yourself that grace that, there's something's good is going to happen. It's the hardest thing to do when you're in that moment. It really is. But time and time again, we hear these stories where, like, thank God that happened to me. I'm so grateful for it because look at what it gave me. It's almost like you go through that experience with a bag over your head. Like, you can't see, you're in the dark, you're blinded from what can happen in the future. But if you just let things unfold as they should, it's kind of funny how things just unfold as they should, and all work out.
Yeah, you never know in the moment. I was angry, I was upset, I was sad, all sorts of negative emotions. And then once I started moving into positivity and those emotions, that's when everything just started teaching me.
Yeah,
it was a gift.
You're speaking my language with the morning routine, because the more you have that stuff in your life, the more you embody what it feels like to have what you're grateful for, or to become the affirmations that you're stating. And it's your habits, it's habitual, it's who you are because you do it every day. And I know that, there's people that we coach, but also other people out here who are maybe hearing this for the first time. Alex, what's the biggest takeaway for that routine? Why did you get into that routine, and what did you notice throughout that process?
So humans need certainty and stability. And when, especially, this is why it's so hard to change for people, is because your identity is the one thing in the world that is complete certain to you, and you always have that stability with yourself. But when you're trying to change, you don't have that certainty. And so the best way to change is to create habits. because it'll lock it in. It'll force you to do something. If you can stay with it long enough and create the habit, then your identity starts to progress over time. Okay. And then you create certainty within there. I just know for me, it works. I've tried it. I've done it. I study people who are successful. It worked for them. I'm going to try it. If it works for all these people who are doing this, thinking like this, acting like this, whatever, and they're doing what I'm trying to do, I'm going to do it. No questions asked. I'm going to try it for myself. I'm not going to judge it no matter how stupid it sounds or whatever. By the way, all the stuff, affirmations, you know, I don't know, quantum realm stuff. I don't know if you guys mess with that, like all that stuff. Beforehand, I would have been like, no, that's stupid. And now I've tried it for myself. So I understand these things and I'm grateful for them. And, you know, when other people are like, no, that's dumb, I'm just like, okay, works for me, works for other people. Not my job to force you to do it. That's that, you know? So it's habits are definitely important.
The quickest way to change is through habits. You agree with that, Coach?
Yeah, because you can unpack what an identity is, right? So strongest force in human personality is to stay consistent with who we think we are, our identity. And identity just comes from what? It comes from habits, comes from references, the things that we do over and over. If you get up and run every day and you do that every day for a year and someone asks you, like, what do you do? And you're like, well, I'm a runner. Like, because you've done all those things, you've proved it to yourself that you are. You've done those things and you've created that identity. So you can create whatever identity you want. Just pick those things. Okay, I'm a millionaire. Okay, well, what does a millionaire do? And you can do those things and you'll become that. It follows, right? So it's most of the identities are there unintentionally that we have for ourselves. I think that's exactly what you're saying, Alex. It's like, well, pick it out. Who do you want to become? Right? If I'm a person that isn't a runner but does want to become a runner, then it stands to reason if I start running, after a while, that's what I'm going to think myself of. Even if you're like, no, I'm not a runner. I don't like running. It's not me. And then there's going to be like some evidence that says, hang on, but you ran 10 miles last week and you've done that every week for the last year. You're a runner. Like there's something along their lines. You're gonna know that you're a runner.
If you act like what you want to be, that's what you'll become.
That's what destiny is, right? Like you mentioned Tony Robbins earlier. I was a Tony Robbins coach for a long time, and one of the things he talked about is destiny. And destiny is like, we think about this big, huge concept of like very up in the air of like, wow, what's your destiny? Destiny is just destination. Like you set out on a path, you get to a destination. That's a destiny. That's all it is. And it's just being able to see, okay, well, if I continue to do things I'm doing now, where's that logically going to lead me? And it will lead you there.
Yeah,
that's what will happen. So just be careful what you do, right? That's the biggest lesson, really. It's the small things that you do every day that are going to get you to where you end up. There are no big things. There are only small things. The big things are just the compound version of the small things. So be careful what you do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Bring us on, Alex. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, you can't just go from step 1 to 100. And I'm just going to bring in, like, that's what the habits are there for. Back on it is, if you do this, example, for me, I was in school, I wanted to trade. Every single day, I was on the charts, created a habit out of it, okay? I literally just sat there, practiced, drew stuff up, rinse and repeat, going through stuff, watching live stuff, listening in on calls, being a part of meetings. I'll tell you exactly, like 1 week, I had about 5 hours of sleep for the whole week, Monday through Friday. And I was just running because I was motivated to do it. I had a lot of coffee and blueberries. Blueberries, pretty good for you. And I was just going, you know, every single day, just spending time learning and practicing. And it was a habit. And that's how I am where I am now, is because I didn't just look at it once a week or try dabble in it here, do a little bit here, kind of test it out. No, I created a habit out of it and made sure that, okay, I don't know. Well, not that I don't know, but I'm not where I want to be right now. But if I do this every day, I can get to this destination. So like you were saying with the destination and kind of just tying in the habit to that.
And that's exactly what we work to here, right? We have a process to define what those things are. We call them leads, right? It's what do you do every day. So here's your outcome. What do you know that if you do every day? If I want to be an FX trader, I'm gonna like watch videos every day. I'm gonna watch 5 hours of videos a day. Okay, that means 25 hours a week, and it could be even a lot more than that, right? But then it's like, okay, well, over the course of a month, I've watched 100 hours of video. That's probably going to put me in a significantly different position than I was before I start. And I compound that over 3 months for a year, I'm going to be a completely different planet. Can't not be, right? And so it's just, what is it that you want to do on a repeatable basis to create the habit, or to watch the leads and to see where your outcome gets to, and have a way of really seeing what that is, right? Yeah, bingo. Thanks so much, Alex. Awesome stuff.
Thank you.
Great examples.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've had an episode with so many principles that were embodied in one place. Like it's everything. It's the habits, the mindsets, the pain, pleasure. It's all the stuff, except maybe blueberries. So maybe that's something I'm going to add to my repertoire here. So thanks for sharing.
What you put in yourself, how you words important. What you eat, what you drink, how you talk, the words that you use, how you think about yourself is more important than how other people think about you. Like all these things and more are so important, not taught about in school. Like people don't know.
Right.
But that's what can get you to where you want to be. Knowing, studying how we work, how the laws of the universe, how we as humans operate at our best. How can I pursue my fullest potential? If you study that, not even just studying, whatever skill you want to learn, but if you put your majority of time into studying yourself and how you can be better all around, you'll do 10 times better in whatever you want to go into.
That's exactly why I do what I do. Bingo.
Mm-hmm. Awesome stuff, guys. Alex, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're the man. Great stuff.